The Great Council Station floated in silence above a pale blue star. From a distance, it looked like a ring of silver light, slowly turning in space. Thousands of ships moved around it every day. Some came for trade, some for peace talks, and some to settle arguments that could start wars. For centuries, the Galactic Council believed that talking was better than fighting. Inside the station was the largest meeting chamber ever built by intelligent life. The room was wide and round, with many tall platforms placed in a circle. Each platform belonged to a different civilization. Some were covered in strange plants for oxygen breathers. Others were filled with warm mist or glowing liquids for species that needed special air. At the center of the chamber was an open floor where speakers stood when they addressed the council. On this day, almost every platform was filled. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to hear the decision of humanity. Many of them were curious. Some were annoyed. A few were even worried. Humans had joined the galactic community only a few decades earlier. Compared to ancient species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years, humanity was very new. Young civilizations usually followed the rules set by older powers. But humans had already shown strange behavior. They expanded quickly. They asked many questions. And they did not always agree with the council. Because of this, the council had prepared a special agreement for them. The agreement would allow humans to remain members of the galactic community, but with limits. Their ships would not grow beyond a certain number. Their colonies would stop expanding beyond a set border. Most council members believed humans would accept. After all, many young civilizations had accepted similar deals in the past. A soft sound echoed through the chamber as the main doors opened. Two humans walked inside. The first was a tall man with calm eyes and short dark hair. His name was Daniel Carter. He wore a simple dark uniform with a small silver emblem of Earth on his chest. Beside him walked Lily Brooks, the second member of a human delegation. She carried a small data tablet and observed everything around her carefully. As they stepped forward, quiet whispers moved across the chamber. Some alien diplomats leaned closer to each other. That is the human representative. They look very relaxed. Do they understand what is being asked of them? Daniel and Lily reached the center of the chamber and stopped. Daniel looked around slowly. He had studied the council for years, but seeing it in person still felt strange. So many species, so many different kinds of life. Tall figures with shining armor-like skin watched from one platform. On another platform sat creatures shaped like long floating ribbons of light. Near the far side of the chamber were heavy, stone-like beings who rarely move at all. All of them were watching the humans. A tall alien figure stood from the highest platform. This being served as the current leader of the council. Its long silver robes moved gently as it stepped forward. Representative Daniel Carter of Earth. The leader said in a calm voice that echoed through the chamber, "Welcome back to the Galactic Council." Daniel nodded politely. "Thank you for receiving us." The leader continued, "Your civilization has been given time to review the council's proposal. Today we ask if humanity is ready to accept the agreement." Lily quietly looked at the many faces around the chamber. She could feel the pressure in the room. The council clearly expected a simple answer. But Daniel did not respond immediately. Instead, he spoke calmly. "Before we give our final answer, humanity has a few questions." A low murmur moved through the chamber. Some diplomats seemed surprised. The leader raised one hand for silence. "You may ask." Daniel nodded slightly. "The proposal asks humanity to stop expanding beyond our current colony border. May we ask if this limit applies to every civilization in the council?" The leader paused for a moment. "No, the restriction is only for newly joined civilizations until they reach stable development." Daniel listened carefully. "I see." He asked another question. "The proposal also asks humanity to reduce fleet construction. Is this requirement shared by older member civilizations?" Again, the leader answered calmly. "No. Long-established civilizations maintain their fleets according to their own security needs." Some alien representatives began watching Daniel more closely. The human diplomat did not sound angry. He simply sounded curious. Daniel asked one more question. "If humanity signs this agreement, how long will these restrictions remain in place?" The leader responded without hesitation. Until the Council determines that humanity has reached the appropriate level of stability. Daniel slowly nodded again. Thank you for clarification. For a few seconds the chamber remained quiet. Some diplomats expected Daniel to begin arguing or negotiating, but he did not. Instead, he simply said, humanity will review these answers and return with a final response tomorrow. A ripple of confusion passed across the chamber. The council leader tilted its head slightly. Very well. The council will gather again at the same time tomorrow. The meeting ended soon after. Daniel and Lily walked calmly toward the exit, while many eyes followed them. When the doors finally closed behind them, the hallway outside felt quiet compared to the crowded chamber. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily looked at Daniel. You already knew the answers to those questions, she said quietly. Daniel gave a small smile. Yes. So I asked them, she asked. Daniel walked slowly down the long corridor of the station, because now the entire council heard those answers out loud. Lily thought about that for a moment. They believe we are going to accept the agreement. Daniel nodded. Most of them do. They reached a large window that looked out into space. The bright council station lights reflected on the glass. Hundreds of ships move around the station like tiny sparks. Lily crossed her arms. If Earth refuses a deal, things would get very tense. Daniel looked out at the stars. They were already tense, he said calmly. Lily studied his face. You seem very confident. Daniel finally looked back at her. The council thinks humanity came here to ask permission for its future. He paused. But tomorrow they're going to learn something important. Lily raised an eyebrow. And what is that? Daniel's small smile returned. That humanity stopped asking permission a long time ago. The human delegation quarters were quiet compared to the busy council halls. The room had large windows that looked out toward the glowing star outside the station. Soft light filled the space. Lily Brooks sat at a long table covered with data screens. She was reviewing files from the council proposal again. Even though she had already read everything many times, she wanted to be sure she had not missed anything. Across the room, Daniel Carter stood near the window, watching ships move slowly outside. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Lily broke the silence. They really expected us to say yes. Daniel turned slightly. Yes. And many civilizations before us probably did. That's correct. Lily leaned back in her chair. The agreement sounds peaceful on the surface, she said. Limits on expansion, reduced fleets, shared trade networks. Daniel walked back toward the table. That is how it is meant to sound. He tapped the control, and a star map appeared above the table. Look closer. Lily studied the map. Lines showed the major trade routes of the galaxy. Almost all of them passed through regions controlled by older civilizations in the Council. Most young species accept these agreements because they depend on those routes, Daniel explained. So once they sign, they can never leave, Lily said slowly. Daniel nodded. Exactly. He changed the map. Now dozens of small green lines appeared in different directions. These are human trade paths, he said. Lily looked surprised. These go around council routes. Yes. When were they built? Over the last 20 years. Lily sat quietly for a moment. So Earth planned this far in advance. Daniel smiled slightly. Earth suspected this moment would come. He activated another screen. This one showed images of distant human colonies. Small cities under domes. Mining stations on frozen moons. Farms growing food under artificial suns. Each colony was designed to survive without outside help, Daniel said. No reliance on council supplies? None. Lily slowly nodded. So the council believes they can pressure us with trade. But they cannot. Lily looked at him again. And the fleets? Daniel switched the display once more. This time rows of human ships appeared on the screen. They were not massive war fleets like those used by older species, but there were many of them. Fast ships, flexible ships, ships designed to travel long distances. Our fleet doctrine is different, Daniel said. We focus on mobility and independence instead of size. Lily studied the screen carefully. They think humanity is weak. Daniel gave a quiet laugh. That assumption has been very useful. Lily stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the council station lights glowed against the darkness of space. "You know," she said, "some of the diplomats look nervous today." Daniel nodded. "They should be." Lily turned to face him. "Tomorrow you are going to reject the agreement." "Yes, and that will shock the entire council." Daniel remained calm. "The shock is necessary." "Why?" "Because someone needs to say no." Lily crossed her arms thoughtfully. "Do you think other civilizations will support us?" Daniel walked back to the window, not openly at first, but quietly. "Some already do." He showed another star map. Several small alien civilizations were highlighted. "These species felt trapped by the council system," Daniel explained. "They cannot challenge it alone. But if humanity does, they may follow." Lily looked at the map. This could change the balance of power. "Yes." For a moment they both stood silently. Finally Lily spoke again. "Are you worried?" Daniel thought about the question. "Of course. But you still believe this is the right move." Daniel looked out at the distant stars again. Humanity did not reach space just to be told where it can go. Lily smiled faintly. "That sounds like something Ethan Cole would say." Daniel nodded. The Earth Council agreed with him. Lily walked back to the table and closed the data screens. "Well," she said, "tomorrow will be interesting." Daniel chuckled softly. "That is one way to describe it." Outside the window, ships continued moving around the great council station. But inside the quiet human quarters, the future of galactic politics was about to change. The council chamber was even more crowded the next day. Word had spread quickly across the station. Humanity would finally give its answer to the council proposal. Representatives arrived early. Some spoke quietly with their allies. Others simply waited and watched the center floor. The atmosphere felt tense. At exactly the scheduled time, the chamber doors opened. Daniel Carter and Lily Brooks entered once again. This time the whispers were louder. Many diplomats expected a dramatic speech or a long negotiation. But Daniel simply walked to the center and waited. The council leader stood from the high platform. "Representative Carter," the leader said, "has humanity reached a decision?" Daniel nodded calmly. "Yes." The chamber became very quiet. Lily stood beside him, holding the small data tablet. Daniel began speaking in a clear voice. "Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for the opportunity to join this community of civilizations." Some diplomats nodded politely. Daniel continued. "Over the past months, we have carefully studied the agreement offered to our people." He paused briefly. "And we have also studied the history of similar agreements." A few council members shifted slightly on their platforms. Daniel activated the tablet. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed several civilizations from the past. These species joined the council under expansion limits, similar to one proposed for humanity, Daniel explained. The images changed. Colony numbers shrinking, trade dependence increasing, political influence fading. "Within 2 centuries," Daniel said calmly, "each of these civilizations lost control of its own development." The chamber filled with uneasy whispers. One diplomat stood suddenly. "That interpretation is incorrect." Daniel turned slightly toward the platform. "The data comes from Council Historical Archives." The diplomat sat back down without speaking further. Daniel continued. "Humanity respects the Council's efforts to maintain peace." He paused again. "But peace must be based on fairness." The council leader watched him carefully. "What is humanity's final answer?" the leader asked. Daniel looked around the chamber. Dozens of alien civilizations stared back. Then he spoke clearly. "Humanity will not sign the agreement." For a moment the chamber was completely silent. Then chaos exploded. Voices shouted from every direction. "That is unacceptable." They refused the council? Incredible. The council leader raised both arms to restore order. Silence. Slowly the noise faded. The leader looked down at Daniel. "Does humanity understand the consequences of rejecting this proposal?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." The leader continued. "The council provides security and economic stability. Refusing this agreement could isolate your civilization." Daniel remained calm. "We understand." Lily watched the room carefully. Some representatives looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. Daniel spoke again. Humanity believes cooperation should be based on equality. He looked directly at the council leader. Agreements that permanently limit one civilization, while others expand freely, are not equal. Another wave of whispers moved through the chamber. No young civilization had ever spoken to the council this way before. The leader's voice became colder. Then what does humanity intend to do? Daniel answered simply. Humanity will withdraw from these negotiations. Gasps echoed across the chamber. You cannot simply walk away, one diplomat shouted. Daniel looked toward the voice. Actually, he said calmly, we can. The council leader stared down at him. Explain. Daniel raised the tablet again. Another star map appeared. This one showed dozens of new routes spreading across human territory. These are independent trade corridors built by humanity, he said. The chamber grew quiet again. Daniel continued. Humanity appreciates the council's offer. Then he delivered the sentence that stunned the entire room. But we no longer require it. The chamber remained silent after Daniel's last words. Many representatives stared at the star map floating above the center floor. The glowing line stretched across large areas of space. Some passed far beyond normal council trade zones. Finally, the council leader spoke. You claim these routes operate without council supervision? Daniel nodded. Yes. A tall diplomat from another platform leaned forward. That would require enormous resources. Daniel responded calmly. Humanity invested heavily in independence. He changed the display again. Images of human colonies appeared. Large farms under protective domes. Factories built into the sides of asteroids. Cities growing beside alien oceans. These settlements produce their own food, energy, and materials, Daniel said. They do not rely on outside supply chains. Murmurs filled the chamber again. For the first time, several council members looked uncertain. Lily watched their reactions carefully. The council had expected a weak young civilization asking for help. Instead, they were facing a species that had quietly prepared for this moment. Another diplomat stood up. If humanity withdraws from the council system, it will lose access to our markets. Daniel nodded slightly. That is true. The diplomat crossed his arms confidently. Your economy will suffer. Daniel calmly changed the display once more. This time a list of smaller civilizations appeared. These societies have formed trade partnerships with humanity, he explained. They are not members of the Central Council Trade Network. Several representatives immediately recognized the names. They were minor civilizations often ignored by the larger powers. You create a parallel network, one diplomat whispered. Daniel did not deny it. For many years, he said, the council leader's voice became serious. Why was the council not informed? Daniel answered honestly. Because the council would likely have tried to stop it. The chamber erupted in new whispers. Some diplomats were shocked by the boldness of the human strategy. Others were clearly impressed. Lily stepped forward slightly. For smaller civilizations, the council system often leaves little room for growth, she said. Humanity simply offered them another option. The council leader watched the two humans carefully. You are challenging the balance of the galaxy. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, we are simply choosing our own path. A long silence followed. Finally, the leader asked one final question. What does humanity truly want? Daniel answered without hesitation. Equal cooperation. He gestured toward the chamber. Humanity is ready to trade, explore, and work with any civilization willing to treat us as partners. He paused. But we will not accept limits placed on our future. The room fell silent again. Across the chamber, several smaller civilizations were quietly sending messages through their communication panels. This moment was spreading across the entire station. The council leader finally spoke again. You realize that this decision may lead to serious consequences. Daniel nodded calmly. Yes. And you still choose this path? Yes. Lily watched as the leader slowly leaned back. For the first time in many years, the council seemed uncertain about what to do next. Humanity had just refused a system that had guided galactic politics for centuries, and there was no easy response. The council chamber felt different now. Only minutes earlier it had been filled with confidence from the older civilizations. They believed the outcome of the negotiations was already decided. Now everything had changed. Many representatives were speaking quietly with their advisors. Some looked angry. Others looked deeply thoughtful. At the center of the chamber, Daniel Carter stood calmly beside Lily Brooks. Neither of them appeared nervous. Finally, the council leader stood again. Representative Carter, the leader said slowly, "The council wishes to confirm your statement." Daniel nodded. "Of course. Humanity is officially ending negotiations with the Galactic Council regarding the proposed agreement." "Yes." "And humanity intends to continue its expansion without council approval?" Daniel answered simply, "Yes." The leader studied him for a long moment. "You understand that the council cannot guarantee protection for civilizations that operate outside of authority." Daniel remained calm. "Humanity has never expected others to defend its future." The words echoed through the chamber. Several diplomats exchanged glances. The leader continued, "You are aware that some member civilizations may view this action as a threat." Daniel spoke carefully. "Humanity is not seeking conflict." He looked around the chamber once more. "But humanity will continue exploring the galaxy." Lily stepped forward slightly. "We welcome cooperation with any civilization willing to build fair partnerships." The council leader seemed to consider this. "And if others choose not to cooperate?" Daniel answered quietly, "Then humanity will continue alone." For a moment the chamber was completely silent. The weight of the decision settled across every platform. For centuries the Galactic Council had guided the growth of new civilizations. Now a young species had openly rejected its authority. Finally the leader spoke again. "Very well." The being raised one hand. "The council acknowledges humanity's decision." Gasps spread through the chamber. Many representatives had expected threats or punishments. Instead, the council simply accepted the statement. But the tension remained. Daniel bowed his head politely. "Humanity appreciates the opportunity to speak before the council." The leader gave a small nod. "The galaxy will be watching your next steps carefully." Daniel smiled faintly. "We expected that." Lily turned slightly toward him. "It is done," she whispered. Daniel looked toward the chamber doors. "Yes." Together, they began walking toward the exit. As they moved across the floor, hundreds of alien eyes followed them. Some watched with anger. Some watched with curiosity. And a few watched with quiet hope. When the doors finally closed behind the human delegation, the chamber erupted into loud debate. But far away in human space, colonies continued growing. Ships continued exploring new systems. And across the galaxy, many civilizations were now asking the same question. What would happen next now that humanity had chosen its own future?